All right, what's going on, guys? Matt DeBary, dogpost.com here again with another recruiting edition video for you guys. Thanks for watching. Lots to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Carson Beck, who I saw last Thursday night. Got to see him play, was really impressive. I'm going to talk a little bit about Theo Johnson, the four-star tight end target, who will be making his decision later this month. And then I also want to get into the college football playoff rankings a little bit at the end of this show. So lots to talk about, and we'll get right into it. So I did fly down last Thursday to see Carson Beck play on Halloween night. And I know he struggled a little bit early on in the season. It's not necessarily his fault. He lost a lot of teammates and really good players from his team last year when he won the state championship. So the numbers don't jump off at you, but I tell you what, guys, he was really, really impressive to me. 4 touchdown performance. He really checked all the boxes. He was more mobile, more athletic than I thought. I talked to his dad afterwards, and he played, high-level baseball and basketball as a kid all growing up. So he's an athlete. He's not a pure quarterback, but he really looked like it out there. He is an SEC-level quarterback, in my opinion. Strong arm, was really accurate, has the leadership tools you want. He's very smart when it comes to learning the playbook, the inside and outside, parts of playing quarterback. He knows what he's doing. Very Jake Fromm-like from that perspective. Didn't take him long to learn the playbook. When he visited Georgia, they showed him some plays, made him draw it up on the board, and he perfected that. So, learning the playbook and getting into the right play, all that type of stuff that Jake Fromm does well, Carson Beck can do the same. So you put that with his arm strength, his accuracy, his leadership, his willingness and determination to win, to go along with his athletic ability, his pocket presence. He really does check all the boxes. He's not going to run like Justin Fields, but he can run and escape the pocket. There were like 3 or 4 times where I thought he was going to be sacked, and he created time and eluded the pressure and then made a great throw down the field. So 4 touchdowns, led his team to a much-needed victory, which is really all that matters. They needed that win, and they got it. He was just really, really good, in my opinion. James Franklin, the Penn State head coach, was there. He left after the second drive. He saw all he needed after 2 touchdown passes on the first 2 drives of the game from Carson. That's when I saw James Franklin leave. So it doesn't take long to watch this kid and say, wow, I mean, he's got it. The tape doesn't necessarily wow you and jump out at you like maybe a Trevor Lawrence's and other guys from the past, but he's consistent. The arm is there. He knows what he's doing, and I think he's going to be a really, really good player for the University of Georgia. So big time game for Carson. I wrote a what I learned watching piece going into full detail of what I saw about Carson Beck. That's on Dog Post right now. Obviously, it's an incredible article, and if you're not on Dog Post, you need to do that right now and go read that. So full breakdown of Carson, what I think of him, how he played on Friday night. But overall, I thought he was really, really impressive. Again, 4 touchdowns and a big, big win for Mandarin there in the playoffs. They're going up against an undefeated team. I forgot the name of it. So we'll see if they can make it through to the second round. But I think this upcoming week could be his last high school football game. But the future of Georgia football, especially at the quarterback, I think is in really good hands. He's the real deal. I was really, really impressed. I think he's thrown 15 touchdowns, 1 interception in the past 6 games, something like that. So he's really on a roll, and they did this last year. They got high at the end, won the state championship. I'm not expecting them to do that this year, but I thought he was really, really good on Thursday night. Now, he took his official visit to Georgia during the Notre Dame game, and a guy with him was Theo Johnson, 4-star tight end out of Windsor, Ontario in Canada, and he's now ready to make his decision. And I've said for a few weeks now, probably a few months, I think Georgia's behind teams like Penn State, Michigan, and Iowa, and I still feel that way today. I know he was a major Georgia target. I do not see him picking Georgia. I think it's on the 18th. I'll have to go back and look at the tweet. But November 18th is when he's going to be making his decision. And my guess right now is Penn State. He took an official visit to Penn State. I believe it was for the whiteout game against Michigan. And that's one of the best experiences in college football. So I think they really took a commanding lead for him after that. But lots of pressure to stay local, go to Michigan. I know he likes Iowa a lot. I mean, no program uses the tight end better than the Iowa Hawkeyes. So, again, this kid wants to catch the football. He's one of the most athletic prospects in the country, not just athletic tight ends. He's one of the best athletes in the entire country. He wants the ball. He wants to make plays down the field. And Georgia's not really throwing to the tight ends like that as much. I mean, we saw with Eric Gilbert going to LSU, still surprising to even think that happened. But these five-star tight ends, they really like Georgia, but at the end of the day, they want to catch the football. And so if you're a five-star tight end, I don't think Georgia would be my first pick either. But so Eric Gilbert to LSU, I don't think Theo Johnson is going to commit to Georgia. So that opens things up. Where do they go? I do think that Georgia's still in a really, really good spot for five-star tight end Darnell Washington. I still think they lead right now behind the scenes. And again, just an absolute freak. I saw him in September play, and he's one of the best high school players that I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot in the past few years doing this. So I still think Georgia is the leader there behind the scenes for five-star tight end Darnell Washington. Michael Jackson, I think is his name, that might be blanking on that. The tight end athlete committed to Oklahoma, took an official visit to Georgia not too long ago. He's another guy to keep an eye on there out of Missouri. So there's names still out there. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Georgia ended up just taking one tight end. I know I've been saying for a while, and I still think they probably need to take two tight ends in this class. But with numbers getting tight, and I think Georgia is going to look at signing a second quarterback in this class. I do think they're going to keep going all out for wide receiver Arian Smith. So with numbers really tight, I do think there is a chance that Georgia only takes one tight end. And if that is Darnell Washington, I mean, that's a really good player, and probably the best one. If you're only going to take one, that's probably the guy that they would have chosen in the first place anyway. So we'll see where they go, but I am starting to hear that there is a possibility they might just take one tight end in this class. They took two last year, Rylan Goody, Brett Sealer. So they do play a lot of tight ends. So I thought until last week that they still wanted to take two, and I think that was the original plan. But there is a chance where I think they only take one. And if it's Darnell Washington, I still think you give an A+ to the staff there. So talked a little bit about Carson Beck. Talked a little bit about Theo Johnson. I did want to point out a lot of Georgia targets will be visiting Alabama this upcoming weekend for the big game against LSU, including Darnell Washington. So he was at Tennessee not too long ago. Still think the Vols are in the mix with him, but I do think that Alabama is the team to watch. He'll be taking his official visit to Tuscaloosa this weekend for the biggest college football game of the season to this point. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to hear some type of rumblings that maybe Alabama has some momentum with Darnell Washington, especially with Eric Gilbert choosing LSU over Alabama. The Tide need a big tight end in this class, just like Georgia does, and I think they're going to go all out for Darnell. I think they're going to roll out the red carpet for him this weekend. So at the end of the day, I think Georgia is going to have to hold on to this lead for Darnell that I think that they have right now. So I do think it'll end up being Georgia or Alabama for Darnell Washington when he makes a decision. I think early January at the All-American game that he will be playing in. So still a little bit of time. But he took his official visit to Georgia already, and that was for the Notre Dame game. He will take his official visit to Alabama this upcoming weekend, and then it's going to be a war from there. I don't think it's a slam dunk at all. I do think Georgia leads right now for Washington, but I wouldn't say it's a comfortable lead. He's still out there taking visits, and like Eric Gilbert and Theo Johnson, he's looking at who's throwing the ball to the tight ends. And while Georgia isn't necessarily doing that right now, they are still in a really good spot from everything I'm hearing. Todd Hartley's done a great job there. So you got to throw those tight ends more, but at the same time, I still think they're in a really good spot for Darnell Washington. But he is looking at that. So we'll see. I do think Alabama might have some momentum after this visit. And how could you not? It's going to be a fantastic game, crazy environment, and he's going to be given the red carpet treatment from what I understand. So moving right along. Other guy, Arian Smith, 4-star wide receiver, one of the fastest, most explosive players in the country. He's another Georgia target. I'm expecting him to be in Tuscaloosa for an official visit as well. 2021 offensive lineman Micah Morris will be in town. So many others. This is Alabama's big recruiting weekend. The list is huge. I know I'm missing so many, but the main guys who Georgia's recruiting is Darnell Washington and Arian Smith, who are their biggest targets left on their board, and they will both be at Alabama, along with a lot of other 2020s, 2021s, you name it. Everyone's trying to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend. So other than that, as far as recruiting, I think there's a chance that Georgia only takes one running back. That's what I'm hearing. I do think that it's possible that Kendall Milton might be the only running back they sign if they don't sign Zach Evans. They're not just going to throw an offer out there. I don't know if they take Dejon Edwards, the running back from Colquitt County. Good player, but I'm not sure that Georgia has room for him and has a committable offer. Maybe he does. If he does, I thought he might have jumped on board by now. But again, numbers are so tight, and there are a few targets everywhere, and especially with them looking at C.J. Stroud, the 4-star quarterback, to maybe come in with Carson, that takes a spot from someone else, whether it's a tight end or a running back. They definitely need another defensive lineman, Zykevius Walker. Another guy who's going to be at Alabama, 4-star defensive end out of Schley County. He'll take his official visit to Alabama this weekend. Another big Georgia target there. And I've said for months now with him, I think if Georgia pushes that, he's a guy that they will get. And he's a guy they need. They need a big-time defensive end, whether it's Zykevius Walker or Jordan Birch. I think they would make room for both somehow, some way, but I think Zykevius Walker is probably the best bet to sign with Georgia over Jordan Birch, in my opinion. So, but yeah, I think there's another possibility they take another defensive back too. Dante Manning, 4-star cornerback, safety type from Missouri, is going to give Georgia an official visit, I believe, for the Texas A&M game. If not that game, then later in December, that second weekend there, where Georgia will be hosting a lot of their current targets on official visits. So Keely Ringo, obviously, I think Georgia's still in a really good spot with him. I think that's a Georgia-Oregon battle, and I think Georgia leads right now. Noah Sewell, 5-star linebacker from Salt Lake City area. I think that's Georgia-Oregon. I think Oregon leads Georgia for Noah Sewell. And if they don't get Noah Sewell, they might just stick with Mikael Sherman as the only linebacker they take in this class, which will be really interesting. Then they can go full go in 2021 and get quite a few linebackers in next year's class. So as far as that, again, I think they could go with possibly one tight end now, one running back now, maybe a third defensive back. They've got Jalen Kimber on board. Keely Ringo is a top target, and then Daniel Manning is another guy to keep an eye on there. So still lots going on. Things change, it seems, weekly with recruiting, as it always does. Again, make sure you're on Dog Post for all the latest updates. I got a recruiting update out every day with the latest on what I'm hearing, so make sure you are on board there. Okay, college football playoff rankings came out last night. I'm looking at it right here. LSU number 1. No, that's not it. No, that is it. LSU number 1, Alabama number 2. Actually, that's not it at all. That's the AP. I think I'm just going to go by memory now. I looked up the wrong thing. So LSU number 1. I think Ohio State's number 2. Alabama number 3. And Penn State number 4. If you're Clemson, that's perfectly fine. Like I've said for a long time, Clemson has the easiest schedule, I think, in college football history. They could sleepwalk through the rest of their schedule, go undefeated, and an undefeated Clemson is going to get in the college football playoff. So it doesn't matter where they're ranked now, and I think Dabo loves the fact that they're number 5. He can sit back and say, "Oh, little old Clemson, no one gives us any credit, blah, blah, blah." So he can work that angle for a little bit, and I'm sure he will. No one loves a microphone more than Dabo Swinney. But no, if you're Clemson, you win and you're in. If you're Georgia, you win the rest of your games, you're in. You can't lose another game. But if Georgia wins out and wins the SEC championship, they are in. That being said, if LSU beats Alabama and LSU loses to Georgia, and that's their only loss to Georgia in the SEC championship game, then you got to put LSU in. They would go in over an Oklahoma, and Oregon, and those one-loss teams. If LSU's only loss is to Georgia in the SEC championship game after running through the regular season undefeated, I think you've got to put them in. So Clemson is in as the undefeated ACC champion. You've got the Big Ten. Winner is going to get in, whether it's Ohio State, Penn State, Minnesota. Listen, if Minnesota beats Penn State and then goes and beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, I'm not expecting it to happen, but crazier things have happened. If Minnesota goes undefeated and beats Penn State and Ohio State, as crazy as it sounds, I think you might have to put the Gophers in there. I don't think anyone's expecting that to happen, but again, yeah, that's why college football is the craziest sport in the world. You really don't know. But Ohio State and Penn State are in the same division. That's essentially a playoff game. Whoever loses the Penn State-Ohio State game is not going to make the playoff, even if it's Ohio State. And as good as they look, if their one loss is to Penn State, they're not going to represent that side of the conference in the championship game, and I don't think they're getting in the playoff. So the loser is out. The winner, I think, has a great shot. So you've got Clemson undefeated getting in. You've got the SEC champion getting in. You've got the Big Ten champion getting in. And then that fourth spot is either, does LSU slide in as a second SEC team, or, is it Oklahoma who gets in with a one loss in the Big 12, winning the Big 12? Or do you look at Oregon and give Oregon another shot if they run the table and win the Pac-12, and their only loss is to Auburn in week 1? So lots to go on, but if you're Georgia, you win out and you're in, 1,000%. If you win the rest of your games, you're in. But again, I think there is a small possibility that either LSU or Alabama sneaks in if their only loss is to Georgia in that SEC championship game. So we'll see. Lots to decipher there, but I do think Penn State probably deserves to be number 4 right now. They're playing really, really good football. They've beaten some good teams, and but we'll see how good they are against Minnesota. I like Minnesota a lot. I think they can win that game, but that'll really show how good Penn State is. I do think Minnesota is a good football team, and I think that game is at Minnesota. So we'll see there, but I think Penn State probably deserves that 4th spot. But if you're Clemson, you just get to sit back and watch these teams playing in front and just move on up. So Clemson number 5 right now. I know people thought that was a little crazy when it came out. It doesn't matter right now. It just doesn't. It's all going to play out. But I do think that, SEC champion, Clemson in the ACC, Big Ten champion. I think Ohio State's the only team in the Big Ten who can lose a game and still make it into the playoff. If their only loss is to Penn State, I still think they win out, and they'll probably get in based on the brand name, and they are a really good team. So we'll see. If Penn State loses to Ohio State or Minnesota, I think they're done. Minnesota obviously has to go undefeated, but I think the Buckeyes, if their only loss is to Penn State, they could still manage to find their way in. That'd be a solid loss. Nothing embarrassing unless they get their ass kicked. But that's how I see it right now. So again, thanks for watching the video. I'll be writing more about this stuff later this week. Comment below, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then go on Dog Post, get a subscription, read all this good stuff, including my Carson Beck story that I got out yesterday. So again, thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you guys next week.